It's Croctober, the official celebration of Crocs fans like you. So whether you like to rock your classic clogs, get cozy and fuss-lined, personalize with your favorite Jibbitz charms, or even, dress up like a clog for Halloween, it's time to tell your story and share your style. Join the Croctober celebration with Crocs fans around the world. Go to crocs.com to discover the range of shoes and find a pair that's iconic like you. Crocs, celebrating you all month long.
Today on CityCast Madison. The election is almost here. This whole month, we've been taking a look at what Madisonians will be voting on this general election. And today, we're focusing in on 2 referendum questions from the Madison Metropolitan School District. Question 1 is an operations levy, and question 2 is for facilities and bonds. But what the heck does that actually mean? And how much will it cost taxpayers over the years? To answer these questions and more, we spoke with Cap Times K-12 for Education reporter Kayla Huynh, who's been covering the subject since the start. And just a quick note, the Madison Public Schools Foundation is a sponsor of CityCast Madison. But this episode, as with all of our episodes, was produced with 100% editorial independence. It's Monday, October 21st. I'm executive producer Haley Sperling, and here's what Madison's talking about. Hey, Madison. It's executive producer Haley Sperling with CityCast Madison. I just wanted to pop in before today's show to let you know that today is the final day of our fall membership campaign. We had such a strong showing of support last week, and right now we're looking for that one final push. If you heard any of our earlier messages and thought to yourself, I'll become a member later, well, today's that day. You've been with us through the deep dives into city politics, the stories about your favorite local spots, the quirky, unexpected conversations that make Madison the amazing place that it is. And you might not know this, but I'm pretty new to the whole podcast world. Before stepping up as executive producer of CityCast Madison, I was the editor of our newsletter, Madison Minutes. And it's been such a joy for me to keep bringing you the stories of our community in this new-to-me platform. I've learned so much and can't wait to bring more of your voices into the conversation. We love telling our city's stories, the good, the bad, the Willie Street weird, and everything in between. But here's the deal. We can't do it without you. And becoming a member is truly the best way to support our work. And it's really easy. It's pretty much like paying for one Collectivo latte a month, but with way more community impact. Though we still love you, Collectivo. Don't worry. All you've got to do is hit the link in our show notes, head over to our website, or go to membership.citycast.fm to become a CityCast Madison member. Every member helps keep our team of local journalists doing what they love, bringing you the stories that you care about. And if you're one of the hundreds of members who already support us, thank you. We couldn't do this without you. Seriously. We're so grateful to have you as part of our community. All right, Madison. That's my pitch. It's the final day of our campaign. Let's make it count. Now, on with the show. Well, Kayla, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So we have been spending a lot of time on the show talking about the city's operating budget, but the Madison Metropolitan School District will also be asking taxpayers for a lot of money, to put it pretty simply. Can you tell me, what can people expect to see on their ballot from the school district this November?
Yeah. So as a journalist, I always think it's funny what our leaders put on the ballot. It's like a huge chunk of text that I'm sure a lot of people do not read. But basically, the translation is there are 2 referendums. The first one is a $100 billion operating referendum. And what that means is basically voters would increase their taxes, their property taxes, to fund the day-to-day expenses that keep schools and the district running. So that would go toward things like academic programs and other sorts of classroom initiatives. But the biggest probably expense would be to pay for teachers and other staff and to also help pay for their healthcare benefits. The second one is a much bigger ask. It is a $507 million facilities referendum, and it would replace or renovate 10 schools. That's what the money would go toward. It is 7 buildings total because 5 of them are shared with other schools. But overall, it's $507 million to help fund those renovations or the complete reconstruction of them.
So that is a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about more than $500 million in requests here. What would that look like in practice for like the average Madison home in terms of their property taxes increasing?
Yeah, so for the operating referendum, it is over 4 years, and it is supposed to increase the taxes for the average Madison home, which is probably a little over $400,000. The increase in taxes would be over $1,000 per year by 2028. And then for the facilities referendum, it's going to be over $300 for that average Madison home. That would start in fall 2025, and it would continue until the debt is gone, which the district expects will take about 23 years.
Oh, wow. These are some really long-term plans, it seems like then.
Yeah, and I think one thing that sometimes people forget is that taxpayers are still paying for previous referendums that they passed over the years. So really, they will just continue to see those increases as everything adds up.
Right. And taxpayers, I mean, we just approved referendums from the school district in 2020, correct?
Yes. So that was the last referendum, similar to the one we're seeing now. It helped fund the operating budget, and also it rebuilt for comprehensive high schools. So those were actually renovations, but really we're going to be seeing the same thing every couple of years. The district needs to go to referendum in order to basically pay its bills.
Okay, so let's take a step back then and look at these referendums individually. And I kind of want to talk about a little bit like of why the school district says they need them. So the first question is about the operational referendum. You said that's $100 million over 4 years. And you mentioned that's, again, for the operational expenses of the school district. What exactly does that mean? What would that money be going toward?
Sure. So this one, to be honest, things are still a little unclear. The board will have a fuller picture of what exactly the money will go toward at the end of October, which the election is November 5th. So it doesn't
That's pretty close.
Right. It doesn't give voters a ton of time to really dig deep and analyze it. But from what we know so far, a majority of the expense would be tied to supporting teachers and staff. That's according to the district. So they say that it will help fund pay increases. So the district and the union recently came to an agreement that if the referendum passes, they could get another pay raise, which would basically cover the cost of living. And they argue that that would help retain more teachers and other staff. And then in addition to the compensation side, the referendum is supposed to help offset healthcare costs for those staff members.
You mentioned retention. Is that a big issue that the district is facing when it comes to teachers?
So in previous years, this is something that the district really struggled with, keeping teachers around. But this year, it's actually much better. We're seeing fewer vacancies overall in schools, and district leaders have really credited the pay raises to the better retention.
I mean, you just published an article saying that over 300 employees of the school district are set to get an increase to their base wages. So it seems like this is kind of a bigger initiative that the district is taking up, right, in terms of paying their employees more.
Yeah, I think it's also a big push from the Madison Teachers Union. They argue that it's not really even a raise because it's just covering the cost of living to keep up with inflation. So I think the board has really listened to that criticism and has tried to kind of make amends with that.
And it seems like, too, a lot of this funding is looking to hire more teachers in the kindergarten and first grade levels. What are those class sizes looking like these days?
So I'm not sure exactly about the specific classroom sizes. I know that some schools, and this is one criticism that people have about the referendum, is that they're being used at a lower capacity than they could be because of declining enrollment across the district and across the state. So some schools, they may be at over 90% capacity, and some of them are running much lower than that.
Okay, so some schools, it's big stuffed classrooms, and some schools are very small and don't have as many students. So how does that work out? Is that just a matter of like population distribution?
Right. So where kids go to school, it's of course determined by where they live, but people are having fewer children right now. And so there are just less kids in Wisconsin. In addition to that, there are people who have left the public school district entirely. They might be homeschooling their kids or sending them to a private school or a charter school. So there's a variety of factors kind of leading to the enrollment declines. But one argument that the district has is that Madison is going to actually expand by something like 100,000 residents by 2050. And so the district is saying, you know what, we think that those are going to be families and people bringing in kids. So they've said that it's really a bet on the long game, even though there are projections that say enrollment in Madison schools is going to continue to decline over the next 5 years.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah, because that 100,000 number is something that we talk about quite often, on the show, and the fact that Madison is a growing city. But I guess the question is, who is coming here, right? Is it younger people with families? Is it older people? Is it retirees? This is going to be definitely something interesting to watch in that regard. Then I guess I hadn't really considered it in that way.
I'm not sure if we know quite yet what the demographics are. I think that there is an argument for both sides, but it can be confusing, right? Because how are we getting so many people at the same time we're losing students in the district? It's not totally clear how those two things match up.
Yeah, that is a super interesting question. Taking a step back and focusing on the second referendum question, the second one is about facilities, and that is where things get really expensive. You mentioned it is a $507 million ask over 23 years. And this is for rebuilding schools and repairing schools. Can you tell us a little bit of what exactly this money is going to be used for?
Sure. So a big thing is that the school district wants to basically completely reconstruct some of the schools. It would be 5 buildings, and they're home to 2 elementary schools, 5 middle schools, and 1 high school. So it would be 60% of the cost to renovate it if they were to rebuild it. I'm not sure if that makes sense. But basically, their argument is that we could just spend a little bit more to reconstruct the school instead of paying for renovations, and that would extend the life expectancy of these schools. But
Gotcha.
The big thing overall is that they're just very old. So the oldest school was built in 1928. So
yeah, that's almost 100 years old. That's crazy,
yes.
Right? It's 2024 right now, 1928. Yeah, we're coming up on 100 years there. That's nuts.
Right. And then one of the elementaries was built in 1943. The other buildings were constructed in the 50s to 1960s. What the money would go toward is basically more modern spaces. So better technology, labs for science classrooms, and just kind of cooler, modern furniture and better lighting. And we saw that with the previous referendum. The new high schools look completely different than they did before. But the biggest thing that the district was looking at when they were choosing the schools to renovate or replace were the electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems. So some of the schools have decades-old boiler heating systems that were actually original to the school when they were initially built. And principals have told me that they need to basically custom order the parts for these kinds of boilers just to fix them because they don't make the parts for them anymore. In addition to that, these schools, many of them are not completely air conditioned. So I think teachers would say they don't want to work in a school where there's a bunch of stinky kids, especially
That's
in the hotter
fair.
months.
Yep. Oh my God. Yeah, that's so fair. I cannot imagine being in a middle school full of boiling middle schoolers, you know?
Yeah, so that was the biggest thing there. They were really looking at the mechanical systems and the fact that they're just past their life expectancy. These buildings are old, and the district argues kids need a better learning environment overall.
Hey, did you know that you can purchase audiobooks directly from Mystery to Me, A Room of One's Own, Leopold's, Lake City Books, or your favorite local bookshop? With Libro.fm, you can pick from more than 500,000 audiobooks, including bestsellers and recommendations from real booksellers. You get the same audiobooks at the same price as the largest audiobook company out there. You know the name. But you'll be part of a different story, one that supports your local community. If you're new to audiobooks, they're the perfect ways to squeeze more reading into your life. You can listen with the free Libro.fm app while you do your chores, walk the dog, relax when you're headed to bed, anytime. If you already love audiobooks and don't know what to listen to next, you can check out recommendations from folks who know best, booksellers. We've got a CityCast special offer. Get 3 audiobooks for the price of 1 with your first month of membership with code Madison.
With Ring cameras and doorbells, it's easy to keep every fright in sight. See who's there. Keep your scaredy cats company.
Oh, it's okay, sweetie. I'll be home soon.
And protect your crypt from the real monsters.
Oh, come on. The sign says take one.
Find dead simple ways to stay connected right now at ring.com.
And so I'm curious too, like what has so far the reaction at the school level been to these referendums? Are teachers excited about these prospects? Are parents excited about these prospects? Or has there been more pushback?
I would say in the school community, teachers especially are rallying pretty hard for the referendum. And I think families do see the need for better schools and to help pay for teachers. Where things get trickier are possibly the people who are not directly tied to the school system. Some of them probably are a little tired of their property taxes increasing every year. And if they don't see the direct benefit to it, it could be a harder ask. I think on top of that, with the city also going to referendum, so it'll be the first time that both the city and the school district have referendums on the ballot, people could be a little exhausted just having to see these asks. I mean, it is a lot of money. And so there's that worry there for the district. But I think overall, Madison has almost always passed these school referendums. Of course, it's a little bit unprecedented with the city referendum, so we'll just have to see there where it goes.
Yeah, it really is an unprecedented situation. I'm really curious to see how it unfolds. I think one of the bigger questions too that I've heard people ask is that why can't we get more state funding? And why is the Madison school district's per pupil spending so much higher than like what the legislature allows? And what role does the state play in creating this funding for the school district?
Yeah, so Wisconsin sets caps on school revenue limits, and that basically forces districts pretty much every election cycle. They are needing to go to referendum in order to exceed those caps. In the past couple of years, the district relied on federal pandemic aid and also the money from the 2020 referendum, but that is over. And so that is why the district is saying we really need this money from voters and from taxpayers. Otherwise, we are going to expect a shortfall in our budget.
And so what would this look like for the district if these referendums don't pass? Is there a plan B that's in place?
Yeah, so I mentioned the end of October. That is when the board is supposed to approve two different budgets. One is for if the referendum does pass, everything goes as they plan. The other is if it doesn't pass. And I think that would mean looking at places where they might need to cut things in order to balance their budget. But we don't fully know yet what it will look like.
So we're kind of just in that wait and see mode, right, of what things will happen. I'm curious if when that plan B does come to light, similar to what the city has proposed. You know, the city, as we mentioned, is putting forward a massive budget referendum, and the mayor has put out that sort of, here's what's going to happen, here's what's going to get cut if we don't get this money. I mean, are we looking at bigger cuts in terms of employees, or it's still just a big question mark?
So we know a little bit. I think where the cuts might take place could be on the administrative side, but the district doesn't currently plan to cut overall employees. But yeah, like I said, it kind of is, we're still waiting it out here to see what might happen.
And we have a new superintendent, which is kind of exciting. What has his messaging been around these referendums?
So overall, he's saying this could really benefit our students. Despite the fact that enrollment is declining, we still have students who exist today that need to go to school, and kids will always need to go to school. So his argument is that things can only get better if we spend more money toward it. And that's overall what he'd like to see. It all, I guess, depends. It's up to the voters.
Right. It's always up to the voters, right? Which is democracy in action, for better or worse, depending on which side you're on, right?
Exactly.
It seems like these referendums, if they are passed, are really just betting on Madison's future. If voters do decide to approve these referendums, do you foresee this being sort of like okay, we've gotten what we need, and will the district sort of slow down on any future asks? Or is that all just kind of dependent on how that population question shakes out?
So to them, they have said that it doesn't matter really whether or not there are more or fewer students. Their argument is just that no matter what, there will be students. And I have asked them about this. Their kind of biggest rebuttal is that they do think that there will be more students eventually, and that the predictions that they're getting are just predictions, which is true, right? We don't know what will happen in the future, but it is interesting to see that that is not really the priority. To them, the priority is just the current students who are in schools right now, who they say deserve a better educational experience.
I mean, I think I hopefully can speak for more people when we say I hope the students, they deserve everything that they should have, right? It's crazy to me that we are teaching students in 2024 in buildings that were built in 1928. That's just, that's kind of wild. But this has been super enlightening. And I feel like we've gained a lot of information, and I still have a lot more questions, but not necessarily a lot of answers here. But this is all good to know. And with that, Kayla, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I had a lot of fun.
That's Kayla Huynh, a K-12 education reporter at the Cap Times. And that's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Haley Sperling. If you enjoyed the show, why not share this episode with someone who has a child in the Madison School District? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. See ya!